We're reciting this chant called continuous practice at lunch, before lunch. And it begins on the great road of Buddha ancestors. There is always unsurpassable practice, continuous and sustained. It forms the circle of the way and is never cut off. Between aspiration, practice, enlightenment, and nirvana, there is not a moment's gap. Continuous practice is the circle of the way. Now here we are in Sesshin, walking the great road of Buddha ancestors. And what is this road? Perhaps you could say it's a road we've been walking all of our lives. Right? When did your practice actually start? Was it when you first sat down to do Zazen? You probably never even heard of Zazen, and you were already doing it somewhere, somehow. When did that road open up? When did you begin walking this path that we call our spiritual life? So perhaps we've been walking it, maybe even for many lifetimes. What is this road? You could say it's a road that includes all beings throughout time. It's a road grounded in space. It's the road right here, right now, of this body breathing. This heart beating. This memory arising, this joint pain, this ferocious headache, this dreamy mind. A road that includes all the joy and sorrow of a human life, of life on this planet right now. For this road, this great road of the Buddha ancestors, is the road of our life. And our life includes all life. So we have this theme of ancestors. Perhaps some of you are wondering, well, who are these ancestors? This theme began maybe about a decade ago. Hogen Roshi originally entitled it Honoring the Ancestors. And we've since changed the name, or the name has melded into the light of the ancestors. And Hogen Roshi originally conceived of this Sesshin as a way of introducing us, his students, to the teachings of his teachers. Maizumi Roshi, Philip Kapleau Roshi, Shodo Harada Roshi. And this Sesshin falls on the week of Maizumi Roshi's death day. So Maizumi Roshi is our Dharma grandfather, and my Dharma grandfather, Chozen and Hogen's root teacher, their teacher that they ordained with, and that Chozen Roshi received transmission to teach. And his death day is tomorrow. There's a recognition within the Zen and Buddhist tradition that it is through our very bodies, our aspiration, our practice, that awakening happens, that awakening dawns. And that this awakening is through embodying practice, through the physical act of sitting, Sesshin, through the heartfelt sincerity of continuing to show up. Minute after minute, hour after hour, month after month, year after year. This is how practice awakening is passed on. It's a living practice. If people of the past, our ancestors, were not dedicated to this path of realization, to the pursuit of truth, to freeing their hearts and minds from the confusion of the conditioned mind, the tangled habits of distraction that you may have encountered already as you come to Sesshin, of numbing out, of argument, of fear, if they weren't dedicated to really seeing this practice through, minute after minute, day after day, month after month of their lives, year after year, we wouldn't have this path today. Or maybe we would have some version of it, but it wouldn't be what we're doing right here, right now. And so it's through our dedication, this circle of the way. It's like, where did this practice realization start? You know, you can think of your own life, but you also can think of like human life. Like, where did this practice begin? Maybe it begins right here. It's through our dedication, our pursuit of truth, through our own efforts to recognize that which is already free in us, that this path continues, that this practice is passed on. When Shakyamuni Buddha awakened 2,500 years ago, they proclaimed, "I, together with all beings and this great earth, awaken." And this collective awakening continues throughout time. The Buddha didn't invent the freedom of awakening, but opened it through a combination of his own efforts, great determination, great resolve. These are all important ingredients for Sesshin. But also through applying the teachings he received. The Buddha had teachers. And then his own intuition. He received teachings, and yet he still wasn't satisfied. So there was, a part of himself that he needed to trust in order to see this through. Okay, I got this teaching, like, how do I actually apply it with this body, heart, and mind to resolve this question, this inquiry, this feeling of disease or incongruency or dissatisfaction in my heart? That's part of the example of the Buddha. Part of the example of the ancestors is, nobody did this practice for them. It's this like formula of receiving the teachings, putting ourselves in the container, and then, also the formula of our own resolve, our own efforts, our own like moment to moment coming back to this. And then, of course, the inexplicable, mysterious grace of the universe is another aspect of that formula. Joan Sutherland, a contemporary Zen teacher, says, Zazen makes us fetchable. Fetchable for our awakened nature. But we too must muster our own efforts, our own determination, our own resolve. We too must apply the teachings that we receive from our teachers and our own intuition. And that is part of what makes us fetchable. So our path, this Zen road, is a road of mind to mind, heart to heart, soma to soma transmission. We practice together. The teacher isn't off doing something else and then comes in to do a Dharma talk or Sanzen. We're all sitting here together. That's part of this Zen tradition. That's maybe one of the unique aspects of Zen in some ways. We all start Sesshin together on day one. None of us get a head start. We all sit Zazen together with our conditioned bodies, and the conditioned body changes as we get older. And we practice this same practice with its hundreds of thousands of variations. In its simplest explanation, Zazen is a practice of just sitting. That's what we're doing here together. Just sitting. And literally, that is part of the practice. That is the majority of the practice. And it's not easy. We're letting this body sit back in our bodies. Which is really a practice. So often our attention is somewhere else. Is in our minds somewhere, or at a distance from our bodies, or judging, or scanning the room, or thinking about something else. And so to reacquaint ourselves with our bodies, to let our body actually relax into our body, or let our attention relax into our bodies. Right now, let your foot sit in your foot. Feel the space of your foot and let your foot just relax into that space. Let your legs sit in your legs. Let your seat sit in your seat. Let your pelvic bowl relax into your pelvic bowl. Let your breath rest in your breath. It fits exactly. We don't have to make it happen. Just right in the breath, we find the breath. Right in the spine, we find the spine. And just letting it sit there. Just so perfectly, it fits. Let the shoulders rest in the shoulders. Let the arms relax in the arms. Let the hands rest in the hands. Let your face rest in that place where your face is. This might sound overly simple, but sometimes we don't let ourselves be simple. The mind thinks, no, Zazen must be something else. I need to make my body somewhere. I need to create it, and then I can focus on it. I need to watch it from up here. But actually, we feel our feet with our feet. We feel our bones with our bones. So I'm emphasizing this because usually we don't allow ourselves such a deep resting in our soma. And that's part of what this tradition is reminding us. Let your body be your body. Let your body rest in your body. We're often just so busy checking. How are other people doing? How are other people reacting to us? Slightly judging others, fixating on something that isn't quite right about the present, about the past, about the potential future. And there's always something that isn't quite right. This is what the Buddha called suffering. This pervasive, subtle level dissatisfaction, this ongoing quest to make sure that everything is right, okay, good. To make sure we aren't offending anyone, that we are all right, that we are good. The Buddha showed that the way to freedom, to deep, lasting happiness is not to try to get it right, but instead to look into the nature of this tendency to try to fix, to try to manipulate our experience. Oh, if only my knee didn't hurt. Oh, if only I could sit full lotus. Oh, if only I could breathe a little bit deeper. Oh, if only the person next to me wasn't breathing so deep and loud. Oh, if only. Oh, if only people cared more about being kind in the way that I think they should be kind. Oh, if only other people weren't so ignorant, then I could relax, then I could practice. Then I could get to the root of some suffering and finally be free. But the suffering, and this is an important point because Sesshin is designed to help us see this tendency. And we will see it. And sometimes we will see it and then we'll run with it because it is really about them. I'm sure it is. Because that's what the mind does. But this is an opportunity in Sesshin when we see that suffering-making mind going into blame, going into shame, going into, oh, if only Sesshin were a little bit different, like we didn't wake up so early, or they didn't chant so long, or the person across from me was better dressed or took more showers. But it's just precisely those things. It's just precisely those things, those small, seemingly petty things. That is the opportunity to look into who is this I that wants things to be different? This is what the Buddha called the root of suffering. It's this sense of separation that arises when we're triggered. Yes. I want things to be different. They are doing something wrong. What is this nature of this I? What is the nature of this dissatisfaction? These are questions that we get to investigate during Sesshin to really get to the root of our dissatisfaction. Not to think about them, because we can go on many tangents about the root of our suffering. We can form new concepts about suffering. But Sesshin is inviting us to investigate the root of our suffering directly through our immediate experience of it. So it takes us actually being in our experience If we're already so identified with the mind, it's so easy to be in the dissatisfaction. So that's why we practice being here. That's why we practice coming back to the soma, the breath, the body hearing, the feet in the feet, the hands in the hands, in the here of our life. Because then when something arises and we find ourselves blaming, judging, we can trace that back. What is the nature of that? What is it actually made of in my direct experience? Who is this I that suddenly arose? But for now, we're focusing on letting the body rest in the body, letting the breath sit in the breath, letting the heart rest in the heart space, letting the mind rest in the space of mind. When we let the body deeply sit, the mind gets to sit. It gets to unwind from its thinking, judging, fantasizing role. It's just a role that the mind plays. And we really get to see and experience that we aren't our thoughts. That we don't actually need our thoughts to breathe, to sit, to feel our breath, to be in our bodies. Then thoughts are freed up to just come and go, like all the other senses, like all these other sounds, like all the other sensations. So this first day of Sesshin, we're practicing arriving. We're letting our attention really begin to unwind. I use this analogy of unwinding a lot, but I feel it's really true in my experience. We can get so wound up, wound around particular projects, particular habits, particular arguments, wound around the experience of being this individual who needs to work so hard to survive in the world, who needs to have opinions, which is true. In some of our work environments, we are required to have opinions and to be good at defending them. We are required to use our minds in particular ways that are very different than the way that we use our mind during Sesshin. Some of us are fixers, and that's beautiful. Some of us look at screens all day, and so we're hyper-focused in a particular way. Some of us juggle various responsibilities, and so are constantly shifting between roles and kind of wound in these different roles, and our bodies morph to take on those different roles. And so we come to Sesshin, even if we're a resident, even if we're attending Sesshin online or in person, we come to Sesshin a bit wound up. And so the first couple days of Sesshin, we're practicing arriving, taking our seat, finding our body, relaxing, softening into the stillness of Zazen. I've been doing Sesshin on the regular for a pretty long time, over a decade, and this is still very rich. The softening into the stillness of Zazen. It's an infinitely deep practice. Discovering the stillness, the quiet of the body, the layers of quiet. And for some of us, we might be getting reacquainted with this stillness, reacquainted with our bodies, reacquainted with the breath, reacquainted with sitting for long hours or rising early, reacquainted with the dawn. And so it takes time. I really appreciate that about Sesshin. It takes time. It takes time to arrive here. It takes time to feel the body, to really feel the body. So Bansho has been mentioning in his practice instructions setting an intention or connecting to our intention. And Dogen Zenji calls this aspiration, connecting to our aspiration, our resolve. So we sit down. It's a big part of our practice is sitting down. And we have this practice, or we've been using this word lately, method, that is meant to help us stay here, deepen into here. And we meet all the ways, all the habits we have for not being here. Especially on the first few days of session. We meet our tired body, our irritated body, our overworked body, a body that aches, that's restless. We meet our fear, our shame, the parts of us that are like, why did I sign up for this? I'm ready to go. A student asked ancestor Unmen, what is Zen? Classic Zen koan. And Unmen said an appropriate response. And practice is responsive. How do we meet this body all wound up in the conditions of this life? If you're practicing with the breath, can the breath include restlessness? If you're practicing resting attention in the body or in the root of the body, can your awareness of the body include nerves, mind movements? Can you feel them as sensations? Or if you're practicing with sound, can your listening be all-inclusive? Include this restless, achy body. Include this boredom. Include these questioning thoughts. Why am I here? And let that be part of the terrain, the geography of your breath, of your listening, of your feeling your body. It doesn't have to be a distraction. Our practice of presence, of being here, is all-inclusive. I've come to, if you haven't realized, I've come to really appreciate the word practice. And practice allows us to be in process. Because we are. This body is sensations that are constantly coming and going, arising and passing. This mind, our thoughts, constantly in motion. We are unpin-downable. Practice is responsive to this changing nature of self, this kaleidoscopic experience of this ever-changing being. So to practice arriving, to practice awareness of breath or awareness of sound, to practice remembering who we truly are, means that we don't get it. We're never going to get it, at least the way we're used to getting it. It also means we can't fail. It also means we don't win. The breath isn't something we achieve. Arriving here isn't a box we check. Got it, I'm here now. In a way, we're always arriving. In a way, we never quite land. Remembering who we truly are doesn't end somewhere. Practice is a coming back to ourselves, and ourselves is an open question. a flow of sensation, an endless dance of sensation, perception, consciousness, awareness. Our true home is not static. Within the stillness of the body, the whole universe breathes. Dogen Zenji says this confusing line right in the beginning of the continuous practice recitation we're doing at lunch. Between aspiration, practice, enlightenment, and nirvana, 4 things, there is not a moment's gap. Continuous practice is the circle of the way. We practice awakening with each breath, with each return to direct embodied experience, aspiration, practice, awakening, nirvana, right here. This is the flesh and blood of awakening. This coming back, this being here, this breathing, this feeling your body, this listening. This is what the ancestors are made of. This is how we become ancestors. So Bansho invited us to lean into the support of the ancestors. And this too is a practice. This too is an invitation and exploration. You don't have to know who the ancestors are. Something Chosen Roshi would implore me to do again and again when I would hit moments of fear or a practice edge or doubt or confusion. She would say, don't be so arrogant to think you do this practice alone. The ancestors are always here waiting for you to ask for help. You have to ask. She could be severe. So who are the ancestors and how do we ask for help? Maybe this is something that we also discover through practice. We can't force a relationship with the ancestors, but we already, in a way, have one just by being here, by doing the bows, by sitting in robes and rows in our bodies, by saying the chants. We're reciting the words of the ancestors. By listening to Dharma talks, we hear the stories, the koans of the ancestors. We find the ancestors in our breath, in the Zazen instructions, in the poems left behind by those who have gone before. We find it in the songs of liberation, in our family stories, in that great aunt who refused to bow down to any man, in our grandfather's compassion, in the nun whose name we can't remember who entered samadhi in the snow and the animals came to keep her warm at night. In Prajna Paramita, great mother spaciousness, who reminds us our own mind is free, mysterious, and beyond time. In the 1,000 Jizos smiling in the garden, in the 1,000 Jizos peeking out of the floorboards, in the walls, chanting their little song, Om Ka Ka Kabisan Ma E Soaka. Wake up, whatever realm you're in, remember you are loved. Jesus sees the awakening potential in all of us, no matter how thick the causes and conditions of our situation, our ignorance, our pain. So I want to end by reading a section from Zenju Earthlyn Manuel's book, The Deepest Peace, where she connects to many expressions of ancestors as she shares a short reflection on early morning zazen in her place of practice. And I read it to share that lineage extends, the ancestors extend to other zendos on this planet where people are engaged in this ceremony of sitting, this practice of awakening that we call Sesshin. We're not doing this alone. Even right now, thousands of people all over the world, maybe millions, are doing some form of what we're doing. Our practice joins them as we walk this great road of Buddha ancestors. I also read this because she can make the most ordinary aspects of practice sound quite sacred and mysterious. Slipping into peace, awakened freedom. It's dark. The wake-up bell rings for morning meditation. The time has come to do the mundane. Wash the face, brush the teeth. For now, it's morning. The birds crowd on branches to sing near the zendo, the hall of silence. Meditation has already met me at the door, has entered my body. I breathe slowly, a must to enter the darkness. As I walk down the aisle in a black robe, my feet erase the footprints of yesterday. As a humble daughter of the enslaved, I have come to a practice of stillness the old Africans, although bought and sold, understood. They knew the importance of silence, of listening for guidance. The gateway to peace came to those who did not give up, those who did not believe themselves to be what was imposed upon them. I continue to walk the cold floors of the zendo. No one knows I'm being escorted by my ancestors. I understand that this is where my ancestors have brought me to see them, to see myself, to see life. I announce my arrival by bowing toward my seat and then out into the meditation hall. Rather than bowing in submission, my ancestors and I are bowing to the ancestors of those who will sit next to me, whether they've arrived or not. We'll sit alongside each other with nothing to do except breathe in the way humans have done long before our birth. As we breathe, we are in a profound moment of stillness. We are inside a peace we could never have conjured on our own. In this way, Zen is a sitting ceremony. We know we are to bring ourselves, but still we ask, is there anything else I must bring? Nothing, nothing. What must I do? Nothing but be alive. It's a ceremony that mimics life. The breathing of deer, the slow trekking of bears, or the smell of sandalwood trees. There's no awakening through sitting unless in the middle of the sit you are fortunate enough to experience the beauty of the deer, hear the bears trekking, smell the sandalwood trees, and know such life as you. You wake up without the superiority of being human. You wake up humbled in the middle of chanting, in the middle of life. So I want to reiterate. We know we are to bring ourselves to Sesshin, to Zazen, but still we ask, is there anything else I must bring? Nothing. What must I do? Nothing but be alive.